G10, G10. Diwa, can you unmute G10? Ayan. G10,
Yes.
can you speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have a
I can.
good connection? Can you hear us?
As of now, it's good so far.
Okay. Okay.
And good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good
Jitan.
morning, Reverend.
I-unmute mo ako.
Mas nawala yung power ko to mute and unmute people. Bakit? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our participants. To all our participants, can we request that you type your name and then your organization and your country so that we can properly address you later if you have questions or comments during our open forum. Ano? Bakit? Mamaya pa ako sabihin, may sinabi ko kayo po sa may meeting ako.
Umaga ba sa kanila o hapon? Hello, everybody. Hello, Paul.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
So we'll be starting in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
So far, we're just waiting for one of the speakers.
Okay. Okay, so I'll see you then at 1:30. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Naku, ilan lang tayong nandito, puro sila pa.
Hello again for everyone. Hello to everyone who's here. We'll be starting in a few minutes. We're just waiting for some of our speakers. For everyone who is here, hi, Mr. Anthony. Can
Hi,
you
how
hear
are
us?
you? Yeah, final I could.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's good that you have a good audio. For everyone else, our participants, our audience, can you please send us your name and then your organization and your country so that we can address
Uh,
you later
uh,
during our question and answer uh, part of the program. Thank you so much for all our participants and audiences. You can message us. You can message us through the chat box to identify your name, organization, and your country.
who will start first? Hello.
And also, again, to everyone, you can use the chat box, the chat. You can type your questions for later, for your questions or your comments and your inputs. If you have any question later for our speakers, you can send it us to us through the chat box, and then we will forward your questions to our speakers. Also, I want to inform everyone that this meeting, this webinar will be recorded so that you can have a comprehensive report of the whole webinar. So I hope it's okay with everyone. The speakers and the presentations, also the questions and the participants. The Zoom webinar will be recorded.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So are we on audio or on video?
We will use the audio.
Okay, okay, fine, fine, fine. Huh. PBM Basamo, it is there. Reverend, good morning. You still look handsome, huh? I don't have headphone.
But can you hear us clearly even without headphones?
Yes, yes. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay.
Is everyone is online now?
Yes,
I
yes,
think all the speakers, we have all the speakers online now.
Okay. So it's only 11:01.
Hello, everyone.
I
Again, hi to everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of ILPS Commission 10 on India's Northeast. Again, we welcome everyone and we thank you for coming here. For all our participants, our audience, uh, may I request you to message us through the chat box of your name, organization, and country. If you can send us a message through the chat box of your name, uh, organization, your affiliation, and your country so that we can properly address you later during our question and answer if you have questions. And also, if you have any question or comment, if you want to speak, you can message us so that we can turn on your microphone maybe, or you can directly send your question or your comments to the speakers using the chat box. Okay. again, we would like also to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded. The Zoom meeting is recorded so that we can have a of our webinar. Again, welcome and thank you for coming. Good morning to everyone who is in India, in Northeast, and good afternoon for our participants here in the other side of Asia, in the Southeast. I think it's midnight or it's evening for our friends in Latin America and North America. Again, you can continuously invite your friends, your colleagues that want to participate in today's webinar. If you have questions or comments, you can send it us through the chat box. Hello, everyone. I think it's time we can start now. Hi, everyone. So again, welcome and thank you to everyone who is here to get with us on the webinar of ILPS Commission 10, Journey to Indigenous Northeast. Without further ado, I would like to give message and opening remarks, the lead convener of ILPS Commission 10 to welcome everyone in today's webinar. We have here Miss Beverly Longid, International Officer of Katribu, the lead convener of ILPS Commission 10 to welcome everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody who's joining us in today's webinar. I hope everybody's doing okay amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And with this, I understand that many of us are already doing most of our meetings and activities online. Anyway, today's webinar is initiated by the International League of People Struggles, or Commission 10, in partnership with the Youth Forum for Peace and Human Rights in Manipur. For those who do not know, the International League of People Struggles, or ILPS, is an anti-imperialist and democratic formation. It promotes, supports, and develops the struggles of the peoples of the world against imperialism and all reaction. The ILPS has 20 concerns, and ILPS Commission 10 is one of these, which focuses on the rights of indigenous peoples, national minorities, oppressed nationalities, and nations for self-determination and decolonization, against discrimination, racism, and national oppression. Today's webinar on India's Northeast, was one of the resolutions of the ILPS Commission 10. to facilitate conversations, studies, and campaigns on issues of indigenous peoples and national minorities. It specifically wants to highlight the concerns of the peoples of India in the Northeast. I mean, the Northeast has been in the spotlight recently in relation to the issue of the Citizen Amendment Act that made headlines across the globe. And of course, we also know that the Northeast is also composed of different states and different peoples. And probably it is important for us to understand what do you mean by Northeast and what composes the Northeast, who are the people of the Northeast, and what are the issues and challenges that the peoples of the Northeast face today. So we hope that at the end of this webinar, for those who are not familiar or for the first time hearing of the Northeast, it will bring out an interest for us to know more of the Northeast. And for those who are more or less familiar, we hope that you would have a better understanding of the Northeast. We look forward in building greater international solidarity, not only with indigenous peoples and national minorities, but also with the other working class or working sectors of society, like the farmers, the workers, and the youth. So we hope that today we will have a very interesting conversation, and we look forward to hearing from you and you being part of similar initiatives of the ILPS Commission 10 in the future. So thank you very much, and let's have a fruitful and interesting discussion on the Northeast.
Thank you so much, Beverly. And again, thank you for coming here in our webinar. This is first for ILPS Commission 10. And maybe this webinar will really help us to understand more of India's Northeast and build international solidarity with the people, not only the indigenous peoples, but all the marginalized sectors and peoples of India's Northeast. Okay, so I think we are all set, and may I have the honor to introduce to you our first speaker this afternoon and this morning for those of you. We have four speakers, all of them from India's Northeast, from different states and from different organizations. So our first speaker, he is a minority rights activist, especially concerned with indigenous people, Christians in Meghalaya and in India. As of the mid 1980s, he was the chairman of KJP Synod, Jinggyaseng Samla, I hope I pronounced it right, a Presbyterian Church of India, and as a president of HESPO, Heritage Environment and Status Protection Organization, he led campaigns and as a whistleblower against the uranium mining in Meghalaya. Let us all welcome Mr. PBM Basayo Moit to give us an introduction of India's Northeast.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Greetings from Northeast India, the land of hills and valleys, of caves and waterfalls, of mountains, ridges, of streams and rivers, of birds and bees and butterflies, of animals big and small, and of forests in which there are 60% of land is forest land, and of a mosaic of indigenous communities and music. Thank you for recognizing us, the people of Northeast, the indigenous people of Northeast, and arranging this webinar that you can hear us and know us. Now, let me begin first. I have about 4 or 5 points to share with you. First, regarding the states, the area and the boundary of our states. I cannot give for every state, but I'll give you the composite of the Northeast of India. The Northeast of India has been called Seven Sisters, as there were 7 states in the region, namely Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura. But today it includes Sikkim, and so it is 8 sisters. Compositely, it has an area of 262,230 square kilometers, bordering with Tibetan Autonomous Region of China, some 1,395 kilometers in the north with Myanmar, in the north, with Myanmar in the east, that is 1,640 kilometers, with Bangladesh in the south and southwest, 1,596 kilometers, 97 kilometers with Nepal in the west, 455 kilometers with Bhutan in the north, a total of 5,183 kilometers. Now, if I come to Thailand, or when I came to Thailand, nobody recognized me as an Indian because they thought I'm a Thai. Somebody was waiting for me. I was waiting for somebody at a Bangkok airport to meet me, but that person could not meet me because he thought my face is an Aryan or a Dravidian face. So if you see the people of Northeast, people in East Asia will think that we are the same. Now, it is believed there are some 200 tribes in Northeast India, the majority being hill tribes and are the indigenous communities of the region. And these are notified tribes as per Government of India notifications, having respective languages, dialects, cultures, customs, and traditions. With those faiths, primal religion, the origin of these indigenous communities are Tibetic, though later those of Aryan descent came east and occupied the Assam, Brahmaputra Valley, and the Varak Valley. Then the climate and the weather patterns in Northeast and the Northeast monsoons, though land formation like mountains, hills, valleys, including the Bay of Bengal, have their influences. But in general, the climate is subtropical. It may be mentioned that the Northeast is the rainiest region in the country, with Sora or Cherrapunji having 463.7 inches of rain annually, and being one of the wettest places on Earth, but not for the whole year round, as most tourists presume. However, climate change is having its negative impact on climate in the region, raising questions as to whether one can continue with and promote sustainable and traditional livelihoods or not. Fourthly, the way of life of the people of Northeast. Those who have read Shakespeare's Twelfth Night might remember Duke Orsino saying, "If music be the food of love, play on." Indigenous communities here love and thrive music, singing and dancing with meaningful art forms as per need of the hour. Sorrowful, gaiety, spring, rainy season, harvest, planting season, most probably intricate to worship. On the whole, the people are simple, straightforward and frank, hospitable though wary of strangers. But community solidarity is very strong. And a minority, some are very microscopic population, more or less, drive us to tribal affinity or solidarity, being clannish, lest we are wiped out from the face of the earth. Unfortunately, it is misunderstood and misinterpreted by those outside our fold, and they are the majority. Fifthly, we are the children of nature. We coexist with others of creation and adjust ourselves with weather patterns, that is, 4 seasons in a year. But ongoing development undertakings are at accelerated pace obviously leads to loss of biodiversity and giving rise to unpredictable weather patterns. The Paris Agreement on Climate Change has a provision on seriously taking into account suggestions coming from indigenous communities to mitigate climate change. But we don't see that happening. We have now, lastly, is the challenges that we face today. One, the conflict between modernity and tradition is very much ongoing, as is capitalism versus socialism, not communism, economics of the poor versus economics of the rich and powerful. Secondly, unfortunately, the struggle for autonomy is questioned as being struggle for sovereignty and being anti-national. So there is the sixth schedule provision in the Constitution of India, and for tribals outside the Northeast, there is the fifth schedule. These are supposed to be the protection, our sacredness, and our individuality as tribals in Northeast. Till date, India has not ratified the UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And so there is a disconnect between the tribals of India and the global indigenous communities. To whom do we turn? In India, we are considered as tribals, but outside India, they are called as indigenous people. So to whom do we turn? Because the labels and the definitions are different. Fourthly, because of our being very small indigenous communities, we are wary of India's Look East policy, now changed into Act East policy, as we do not see what it has in store for us except to be the gateway to East Asia. Thank you very much for this short and brief introduction to
Thank
Northeast
you so
India,
much.
to all of you. Thank you.
That was a very short and informative introduction, a glimpse of the rich history and the people of India. We have a few comments here. Comments from our friend Beverly. The
Yes.
costumes and the colors, the dresses, and the patterns of the Northeast are very similar with those of the Southeast Asia, especially those in
Right,
the Cordillera and the Philippines.
right, right.
And I think there's a lot more similarity that we
Yes,
are finding out with this discussion. Okay, so
right,
thank you so
right.
much again, PBM. And for
Yeah,
your comments and questions, maybe we can park it for now and let's have it
yeah.
later. Okay?
Okay. Fine,
Eh,
fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that was
You're
our
welcome.
first
Yes,
speaker.
most welcome. Yes.
And now let's go to our next speaker for today. From short introduction of the history and the general geography and the people of India's Northeast. Now we have the Secretary of Center for Research and Advocacy in Manipur. He is a writer and continues to write with media establishments like Impal Free Press, epow.net, and many others. He produces also documentary films on land and indigenous people's rights in Manipur. He is here to talk about the key issues on developments in Northeast India. Let's all welcome Mr. Jiten Yumnam. Hello,
Uh,
Mr. Jiten.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Paul, and thanks to ILPS 10 for convening this webinar, and also my regards to all the participants attending this webinar. And thank you, Reverend, for your nice introduction of notice, very informative. And I will just supplement some of the key issues in notice, and also touching a little bit into the history, some context in the region. So Northeast part of India, it comprises the state of Assam, Manipur, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Tripura, and Sikkim, and covers an area of 262,179 kilometers, square kilometers. That's quite a huge area. And sharing 99% of entire Northeast is sharing international border with China, with Burma, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh. No? And this is important because the entire Northeast India is very strategically located right in the middle of three major sub-regions: South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. So in terms of region, geographical, it's very strategic. And in terms of the communities Reverend had already mentioned, I will not repeat. There are more than 200 indigenous groups in the region. And so, what I want to flag up is the region is still afflicted with an armed conflict situation in a varying level. Some groups are having peace talk, but there are various forms of self-determination movement, ranging from demand from autonomy to full sovereignty of the land territories. And of course, there is a bit of history as to why different indigenous groups are coming up with their self-determination movement. The way how the region is merged to India, the way how it's been integrated to India, I think it has provoked a lot of objection and concern and condemnation, and then leading to armed resistance movement all throughout the region. So in short, there is still an armed conflict situation with ongoing movement for self-determination in the region. And on the part of the government of India, the response is continues to be a military response. And we see the government promulgating or enacting this Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1958, which has been imposed almost all over the region, except in very few areas. And then, of course, there are other legislation that includes the Unlawful Activity Prevention Act, the National Security Act, which are actually used to criminalize human rights defender and also target innocent civilians. So in short, the human rights violation and impunity of the military and all those involved in the violations has been a long-standing concern in Northeast. And of course, the issues of militarization has been a long-standing concern across the region. So with this, and probably my other fellow colleagues can elaborate a little bit on this aspect, on how the militarization and the military response to the self-determination movement affect their own land and territories. I will go next to the development aggression in northeast part of India. Fortunately or unfortunately, our part of the region, almost all the states that I mentioned, is very rich in natural resources, no? Especially the minerals, the water, and apart from its geographic, strategic location of the geography. So some of the minerals include chromite, uranium, limestone, platinum group of industries, and yeah, and then of course the hydropower projects has been one of the major push in the region, and these are all pursued in the context of India's Act East policy, which is part of India's neoliberal economic initiatives in the region, in northeast part of India, in its effort to reach out to South Asia and also to Southeast Asia. So this policy, Act East policy, along with other free trade agreements with other countries and ASEAN countries, for example, it has led to an increased presence of the multinational companies, which led to increased targeting of the land and resources of the region. And what we also find in our part of the world is many of the international financial institutions, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and then Japan International Cooperation Agency, for example, these are aggressively financing this extractive industry and also the energy projects, more of the hydropower projects all over the region, along with other infrastructure projects. Let me explain a little bit more on the hydropower aspect. The entire Northeast India has been projected as the powerhouse of India by the government. And in fact, there are more than 200 plus mega dams, big dams are already pursued in the region and intending to generate around 60,000 plus megawatt of power. When the entire region of Northeast require hardly 3,000 or even less than 4,000 megawatt, and the government is trying to generate 60,000, which is almost 20 times what we actually need. And just in one state like Arunachal Pradesh, there are nearly 160 MOUs signed only in one state. And then in the smallest state in the region is Sikkim, and 30 dams are already pursued in the region. Many are already commissioned. What is obvious is these mega dams all over the Northeast, in the entire rivers of the region, this will unleash massive devastation and destruction of people's land and livelihood. So I'm just trying to see, so some of the rivers that flows in our part of the world. The Brahmaputra, this is one of the biggest river in the world, where the government is planning to build series of dams, not just on this main river, but also in other tributaries of the Brahmaputra river. And then this is the Lohit river, where the 1,750 megawatt Demwe dam is proposed. I also wanted to show the other images, where you can see the scale of destruction in this place called Chungthang. This is a 1,200 megawatt Tista dam in Sikkim, which is in a very fragile Himalayas portion of the region. So hydropower, it has been a long-standing concern in the region. Of late in Manipur, where I come from, the government is planning to build around 32 dams, and the government has formed the Manipur hydropower policy of 2012. And in fact, it is also pushing for the 1,500 megawatt Tipamung dam. So what we fear is these dams in Manipur, it will completely upset the lives and also the environment, and also destroy our economic and political sustenance in the region. Another concern across the region, as I mentioned earlier, is also the issues of mining. Of late, the pursuance of extractive industry has been one of the biggest concerns in the region. Limestone, chromium, uranium, platinum group of industries are already confirmed, almost in all the states in the region. And in Manipur, for example, the government is pursuing the extraction of chromite and limestone. And then in Meghalaya, where Reverend Baisamat comes from, the government is planning to mine uranium, and there's been huge protests against uranium mining in their part of the world. When it comes to mining, what we also see is many of the multinational companies like Lafarge is a French company. It's actually operating some of the mining projects in Meghalaya state. And this Lafarge mining of limestone project is kind of also funded by the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and also by Germany's financial arm, DEG, and the European Investment Bank, apart from many other financial institutions. So this is becoming an increasing trend all over the region. And recently in Nagaland, Korean companies are trying to fund, explore limestone and chromite in Nagaland as well. So mining has becoming more intensive in our part, along with the involvement of companies, not just from India, but even from other countries, with the tacit financing of the financial institutions. In the extractive industry, another very serious concern across the region is the oil exploration. So now it is confirmed that oil is found almost in all the states except Sikkim. So Assam is a state where the British colonial powers have drilled oil for more than 100 years. But then of late, just in the last few decades, oil has been confirmed. And then in the last 1 decade, the aggressive push for oil exploration in the region has become more intense and more aggressive. And in fact, the government of India formed this policy called the Northeast Hydrocarbon Vision 2030 in 2016. And this policy envisages to complement the existing oil policies of India, the Oil Field Act of 1948, And then the petroleum and minerals pipeline acquisition right of users of land, for example, 1962, which doesn't recognize indigenous people's right over the land and resources, which confers full exclusive right to the central government, to the government of India. So we have serious problem when it comes to oil exploration or mining projects pursuance in the region, because this doesn't recognize our right over land. This doesn't recognize our self-determination. Rather, it confers full rights and ownership to the government and also to the oil companies from all over India, but even to other countries. No? So now we have oil companies like the ONGC, this is the national company, Oil India Limited, this is again an Indian company. And you have the Kenaro Resource Limited, this is a Canadian company. And then you have the Jubilant Oil and Gas, this is a Holland-based company. So we have company, the Geopetrol is, I think this is a US-based company, another French company as well. So we are now finding oil companies from all over the world descending into Northeast, trying to extract oil, trying to drill oil. So this is one of the major concerns in our part of the world. So I'm showing a photograph of how the oil companies are signing MOUs for oil exploration in Manipur, for example, without informing our people, without recognizing rights. So this has been causing a lot of concern and controversy in Manipur. So what we find is there is a huge opposition to oil exploration in Manipur for the last 10 years. And of course, they cannot commence direct drilling and operation, but the oil companies and the government, they are actually pushing hard for oil service in our part of the world, despite the resistance and objections. We have many challenges with the new policies which are increasingly introduced, but I'll not talk so much about that about the time. But then some of the policies passed by the government includes the Northeast Hydrocarbon Vision, the Mining and Minerals Amendment Bill 2015. For example, these are all policies which are conferring more rights to the multinational companies, which are conferring more rights to the government to acquire land or territory and resources. And these are policies that fail to recognize the community rights over our land resources and our right to develop our own resources. And there are no policies to hold the companies and also the financial institutions accountable for the violations. And then we also see a huge pursuance of infrastructure projects in the region with the financing of the World Bank primarily, with the financing of the Asian Development Bank, and with the financing of Japan. And these are what that all complements to the policies of plunder and exploitation, of dam building and mining and oil exploration and other forms of unsustainable development pursued in the region. So some of the issues, what we find is, as I said, looking into all this developmental aggression, the primary issues includes the non-recognition of indigenous people's rights, the self-determination, no free brand from consent, lack of corporate accountability, the militarization of indigenous people's land, and the human rights violation to protect the interests of the corporates and the political elites and the government. I think that's also one of the concerns. And of course, the issues around displacement, impoverishment, loss of livelihood. So those are other concerns. But let me talk a little bit about the issues of militarization, and also one of the recent concerns is also the demographic issues around the demographic influx in the region. So militarization has been one of the concern in the region because of the ongoing conflict, the military response of the government. But what we also find is the military is also being used to promote this kind of unsustainable and destructive projects in the region. So whenever the oil companies or the mining companies or the dam building companies, they always come with them, and then they are the ones who occupy our land and resources. And the militarization process itself becomes part of a process that led to massive acquisition of people's land and resources. So that is also, apart from the direct human rights violation, the killing and torture and the rape and other forms of impunity. So that also has a direct implication in our in the region. And then, of course, one major concern is the issue of the Citizen Amendment Bill, where the government passed this Citizen Amendment Bill 2016. And this is more about bringing in, other people from other countries, which India considers as minorities. And so what we feel is like this will have a direct impact on the demography of indigenous peoples in the Northeast, because we already had very bad experience of uh, of how the non-indigenous peoples with the state supported and and infused in the region has led to the minoritization of indigenous peoples, like in Assam, in Tripura, for example. So we don't want that process to happen in other parts of the world. So other parts of the region, because what we feel is this state-sponsored demographic infusion of non-indigenous population is part of the strategy. We feel that that is another strategy of the government to undermine the rights of indigenous peoples, to minoritize indigenous peoples, so to make them powerless in their own land. So that's why. So maybe Anthony can talk a little bit more about how why people are responding to or protesting against the Citizen Amendment Bill in the region. So that's why the people in the region take it very seriously and see it as something that threatens our survival and our even our future. So yeah, so the key issues finally is the non-recognition of indigenous people's self-determination and the right over our land and resources. So this is one of the key issues in the region. The aggressive pursuance of energy projects, oil exploration, extractive industries, mega infrastructure projects with IFI financing, and other unsustainable projects in the name of development. Also, that's been a concern. The continued imposition of emergency law like the Armed Forces Special Powers Act and other security legislation like National Security Act, Unlawful Activity Prevention Act. So those are some of the concerns. Issues around displacement, loss of livelihood, undermining our food sovereignty, undermining our future, and then the intergenerational impact of all this kind of development aggression in our part of the world, and then undermining the traditional and customary decision-making bodies. So that's been how the Article 371C or 371A or other Hill Area Committee in the case of Manipur, how those traditional or customary decision-making processes are undermined in all this development aggression process. And of course, the issues around militarization and human rights, targeting of community leaders and organizing. So across the region, there's been strong resistance to the development aggression and also to the political repression in the region. And people have different forms of response, and depending on the situation, some have peace talk, some doesn't have peace talk. So the scale of violence and the scale of response to the situation differs from one state to another, but I mean that requires a very different set of discussion. So finally, my recommendation is to urge the government to recognize indigenous people's self-determination over our land and resources and our rights, and the government to peacefully resolve the ongoing self-determination movement in the region through the recognition of our right and also through a participatory process with the involvement of all concerned and communities in Northeast. And then we will call for the stoppage of all forms of energy projects, dam building, like mining or oil exploration that not only destroy our land, but also destroy our right to survive and right to live as peoples in our own land and territory. And then, of course, to call for the repeal of all kind of policies like the Northeast Hydrocarbon Vision, Manipur Hydropower Policy, for example, that infringe on the indigenous people's rights in the region. And then we also called for the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1958 that has been one of the major factors for human rights violation in the region and impunity. And we also call the government to end all forms of militarization and human rights violation in our part of the world. So with that, I want to conclude my presentation and thank you, everyone. Thanks for all your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, G10. That was a comprehensive overview of the development, the challenges that the India's Northeast. Earlier, we heard of PBM's discussion on the rich geography, vegetation of India's Northeast, and now we can see how many projects are there, and some of them have caused conflicts. Some of them has caused violations on the rights of the people. Again, we encourage everyone, if you have questions or comments, you can send it to our chat box so that we can have it straightforward. And later, after our speakers, we will try to get as much as questions that we have if we still have time. Okay? So now let's move on. I hope you're also still there and enjoying the this journey to the India's Northeast with all this information. Now, our next speaker is an activist uh, for the rights of indigenous peoples. who are deprived of their rights of their own land due to land capture of states, administration, and dominations of non-indigenous people in Tripura, another state of northeast India. He is also the convener of the joint action joint action coordinating committee with which is the apex body of CSOs, the civil society organizations in Tripura. And now to talk about the civil, political, and cultural situation, an overview of Northeast India. Let's all welcome Mr. Anthony De Berma from Tripura. I think I have to.
I
Okay.
hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Sir Anthony.
Right. So let me begin. Like, I think everyone in this panel and those who are as a participant is well versed with the civil and political rights. I just like to introduce something about the civil and political rights. Then I'll talk about the article that is mentioned in the Constitution of India and as well as the UNDSR, and talks about the whole situations in the Northeast and as well as in Tripura. As we all know, civil and political rights are a class of rights that actually protect individual freedom, from infringement by the state, social organizations, and private individuals. They ensure one entitlement to participate in the political life of the society and the state without discriminations or you know uh, so this is one part where we generally understand about the civil and political right. So coming to the article 6 that talks about the article 6 of the UN uh, international covenant civil and political rights that talks about the fundamental freedom that guarantees the individual rights to life and determines the conditions of whatever others. And coming back to Article 26 of India, that laws shall prohibit any discriminations, guarantee equal and effective protections on any ground, such as race, color, sex, language, religions, so and the political opinions, national or social origins for party, but or the other state. And we also have Article 14 that talks about the equality that everyone as a citizen of India are equal. And we also have Articles 21 that talks about the right to life, the liberty, freedom of expressions and assemble, and so on. So this clearly shown how good law that we have in the country and as well as in the international forum. Like, it's not only the United Nations is having or giving that guarantee, but also like European commissions, and you will find a different country that has actually framed these respects of human rights, giving the liberty and the respect and the right to the people. But coming to India, as we have seen, the Armed Forces Special Power Act is a agrarian law and Black Law Section 4, which allow any military persons on suspicions that you can shoot and kill. And in this, we have seen in the Northeast right from 1958, where our Naga brothers have been actually struggling to fight for the self-determination, and how the operations and how the military operation has actually carried out in the state of Nagaland is unbelievable, and that cannot be explained or expressed in word. Only one who had witnessed can actually feel how that painful it is. Thereafter, it continued to Manipur, Assam, then the Tripura, then the other part of the state in the northeast. So now it is all the violations of all those articles that is enshrined in the Indian constitutions and India by signatory to the Human Rights Declaration and also the signatory to the right to indigenous peoples are all violating all those rights that what the Northeast people are actually fighting. Now the Armed Forces Special Power Act is actually contradicting the whole article that actually gives you the respect, gives you the rights, respecting the, your liberty, freedom of expression and assemble. All this thing is being violated in this process. So one can articulate or contextualize how these laws are beautifully designed and framed. And on the other hand, when the indigenous people fight for their self-determination, for their right to life, for their human rights, then there is a suppression and oppressions. So this is how the indigenous people of Northeast are being deprived. And this is how the Northeast people voice are being suppressed that cannot be, raised in the kind of India democratic system. So why we are actually fighting for this is we were once upon a time free from all these black laws, all this drug law. We are free from all these discriminations because we live our own with our tradition system, with our customer rights, with our goodwill of our different diversity of the cultures and color, and we enjoy the flora and fauna of the natures, and we live with the forests. But all those forests has been actually now destroyed by enforcing the Forest Right Act 1927, which is a British colonized act. And this act is still prevailing under the state of India. So we are suffering not only from the militarizations, not only suffering from the laws and policy that is being framed by the India, but we are also suffering from other, racial decisions that how the India government looks us, because we are totally different from our culture, from our appearance, from our food habit, from our natures, from our dressings. So this shows a total difference from the rest of the country. That's why it's defined the Northeast in India and Northeast of India. This very word sentence itself is dividing us from the rest of India. So therefore, we are still struggling to fight for our self-determination because we are not asking anything new demand from our government of India, but we are asking back to return all what was ours, what was belonging to us. So therefore, now introducing the Citizenship Amendment Act, it's a total gross violations of the indigenous people in the Northeast. Now, when I met with the Home Minister, when we uh, submitted a memorandum, when I lead the delegation of Tripura, including regional political party and national parties, we said that we are not against the act that you are passing, but we are against that you are allowing more people to reside in the Northeast regions. We are already suffering from last 1950 since the time that we have merged with India. Now, the question that we counterattack government is you are so much concerned about the Hindu minority that is being prosecuted in 3 countries, that is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. But what about those whom you are trying to protect, saying that those who are being prosecuted are the same people who are residing in your own state and prosecuting your own citizens? So we are not having a concerns about the indigenous people of your own country who are being persecuted by the illegal migrant. Whom are you going to give the citizenship? So that is the counter attack that we are actually challenging or countering to the government of India under this Citizenship Amendment Act. And this is not the first time that we have been actually protesting, that we call for a indefinite strike in Tripura and as well in the Northeast. And in the whole process, when we did this strike, the illegal migrants came out and start attacking the indigenous people. And this is how many of the state the indigenous people had suffered. Now our question is that when we are not against any illegal communities, why the illegals migrants are attacking to the indigenous people when we are protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Bill? We are against the administration order, we are against the law and order of the government. Why and how they were being allowed to attack the indigenous people? So these are the issues that we are raising and we are fighting for our self-determinations. Now, citing all these issues and problems, why we are actually fighting for the self-determination, why we are fighting for the civil and political rights. When a community or when indigenous peoples, their civil and political rights are not being respected. So the basic fundamental of the human right is being violated. In the constitution, you have talks about the beautiful law that is actually respecting the peoples, respecting the indigenous people, and right to equality, right to life, liberty, and so on. But on the other hand, when we're reclaiming our rights, then you start attacking us, then you start killing us, then you start shooting us. So where is the basic right of the civil and political right exists in the Northeast region? Now the questions is no longer about the whole issue of rights that the law talks about. Now we are actually struggling and fighting for our survival, for our existence as a human being. We are also human beings like anyone in the country. We also like to live. Our lands are being taken away. Now, giving the example of Tripura, we are having 90% of the indigenous people. But today, we are not even 18% in Tripura. All our lands and resources and forests has been taken away by the illegal migrants. And the administration and the judiciary and the executive is all controlled and run by the illegal migrants. And if you also see, the forest is no longer under the indigenous people. The forest has been taken away from the indigenous people. And now in these global nations, in this sustainable development goal that the whole world is talking. Now my people, my indigenous people are dying out of starvations and dying out of, so many diseases, malaria, diarrhea, and now this coronavirus, the COVID-19 is coming into the, country. So these are the crises that the indigenous people of the Northeast are actually suffering. Now all those armed groups in the regions are actually not fighting with anyone's like how the UN or how the country is recognizing the terrorists. The armed group who are struggling in the Northeast are all fighting for their self-determination. They are all fighting for their freedom. So now, questionings to the India context. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Are they not the freedom fighters? They have taken the guns, they have started killing, they have counter killing to the British, who has actually ruled India. Now they're being respected and they're being observed and they're being celebrated across the country, whereas our freedom fighters are being actually killed under the Armed Forces Special Power Act and under the so many laws that have been enforced, like National Security Act. And there are so many acts that actually, if I have to describe and tell, it will actually take more time. But what I wanted to gives a glimpse is that how the Northeast people are actually suffering. Today, as you all know, the armed group existence is almost declined to almost 0%. But why the Armed Forces Special Power Act is still existing? The question is, Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958 is not only for the armed group, but it is also for the natural resources. Because if this act is being uplifted or being repealed, then they will not have the control to maintain the law and order where the natural resources are being taken away. So the Armed Forces Special Power Act is being enforced even today is because to to restrict the indigenous people not to fight against the mega dams, not to fight against the uranium mining, not to fight against the gas mining, oil mining, and so on and so forth. So these are the areas where still they are actually, trying to suppress the movement of the self-determinations and the civil and political rights. So overall, if you see, none of the Northeast state is actually enjoying the self-determinations. Of course, I could understand that the Tripura alone is being ruled by the illegal migrants people. But what about the other Northeast? Like all the other seven sisters are being ruled by their own people, but yet they could not exercise the fundamental freedom. They cannot exercise that right to self-determination. They cannot exercise their right to equality. They cannot, overown their land and resources because they're, guided or under the whole framework of so-called Armed Forces Special Power Act, so-called those other security act that is actually suppressing you not to take up any decisions of your own. So now the kind of free prior informed consent has been never been respected in the regions. So to talk about a civil and political right is a question of our survival now. The moment that I start talking the self determination on the civil and political right, then the movement, then I will be detained, I will be arrested, or I will be assassinated. We have witnessed how our these elderly leaders, how they lost their life is because they were fighting for the self-determination. So whoever fight for the self-determinations, they are being assassinated. So therefore, you hardly find now any human rights activists in the regions because of this fear psychosis. So everyone wants to live as a human being. So they have a life, so they don't want to lose their life. So very few handful in the Northeast are still struggling and fighting. But even though that we are being, detained, we are being arrested, we have seen how our Okil Gogoi has been arrested and released because of the Armed Forces Special Power Act, and how I was also, booked under the seditions case and so forth. So many of our colleagues, human activists, has been actually arrested, right from our chairman, Hevel Level Koloi, and many of the members are being actually arrested and they're being detained and so now we hardly find all our friends actually coming back again to the human rights activism. So these are the issues that is actually prevailing in the Northeast, and we are still struggling to fight. And you know, the Citizenship Amendment Bill, actually Amendment Act, now it has been Act. This has again created another, havoc that will actually take away all our land resources and all our political rights, because India is a democratic country. So only in the form of politics, in the form of votes, that this democracy is being actually exercised. But when we talk about the self-determination, then the meaning of the democracy is being actually totally, violated, and totally it is suspended, and it is simply not there. So therefore, the civil and political right is a challenge for the indigenous people to still to actually get all our rights and all our liberty. So the freedom of expression and assemble has no longer been actually existent in Tripura, because uh, any time, any movement that the indigenous people want to move forward, go for this thing, so we are actually being not allowed to to continue. So I think these are the short brief of the civil and political right where the indigenous people are actually facing in Northeast and in Tripura.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you so much, Anthony, for that comprehensive discussion on. You have mentioned of the big issues right now in not only in Northeast but in all India, the Forest Rights Act, APSPA, and CAA, and we know this is really big issues for the people, not only for the indigenous people and the minorities, but affecting the rights and the culture and the identity of our brothers and sister in the Northeast. So I think I believe you everyone wants to hear a lot more on these issues. That's why actually this is just the first. This is just one of our many webinars on Northeast, and we are looking forward in discussing those big issues to really dig deep on how it affects our people and the rights of our people. So again, thank you, Anthony, for that a very comprehensive discussion. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you can send it to our chat box, and we will try to answer them if we have time. Okay, so let's move on to our last speaker. Our last speaker is a student leader, a person who is working for the rights of the Karbi people. These are a tribe, peoples from Assam. He is a general secretary of Karbi Students Association, working to protect the identity of Karbi people from getting exploited by the state. And KSA works with, in coordination, different civil society organizations in the northeastern region for their collective effort to fight against suppression and to assert their right to self-determination. This is a one of the many tribes that we want to know, and hopefully we can welcome more on our next webinar. So let's all welcome Mr. Tangsing Timung from KSA. I'll just have to. Okay,
Uh,
Mr.
yeah,
Tangsing,
yeah, you can hear me, sir.
can you hear
Uh,
us?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Paul, sir, for inviting me this webinar. So this is my first webinar that I have attended, and I've been working together in some seminar with Anthony Sar also and Jiten Jumnam. I think he recognize me. So basically, I'm from Karbi Anglong, the large district of Assam, which from India. So I'm representing from my tribe. There is Karbi. So as I was given a note by Jenison sir to prepare the historical background of Karbi Anglong. But apart from that, I would like to highlight some of the issues that we have been chasing every year, and the violation of our rights by the government. So apart from this presentation, I would like to highlight all this issue that the organization used to tackle. Uh, Now, let me talk about the historical background of Karbis. As like many others tribal group, the Karbi did not have a written language, so there is no written history of their origin, spread, and settlement. Much of their early history is based on the tradition and belief of the people. Only a limited amount of information has come from the studies of social infinities and archaeological finding. So when we talk about ancient or pre-Ahom period, we believe that there is some evidence that the Karbi migration route from Burma to the present Karbi Anglong and its neighborhood was through northern Manipur, southeast Nagaland, and northeastern Kachar Hills. Now, presently, we used to call it Dima Hasao. So, according to some prominent writers like Stock and Line, noted that there are some river which was named in Karbi language. This is in part of southern Nagaland, northern Manipur, and in North Kachar Hill. So these are the some evidence that we have. But apart from that, I want to brief that though the Karbi belong to the ethical to the Indo-Mongoloid group, they have strong ostrich culture concerning certain practice related to the dead, such as a monolith installation. Yes, ancient or pre-Ahom period, Kiratas, including the Karbis, at least the earlier batch of them, if not all, had come to settle in the ancient Assam before the compilation of the Mahabharata, that is far before the beginning of the Christian era. The Karbis can be said to have the first appear in ancient Assam around 1000 BC and possibly left to North Kachar. Ahom period. Although the Ahom arrived in Assam in 1228 AD, the Karbis came into contact with them only in 17th century. The Ahom assured them that the right of the son to father property will be restored and secured under the law of Ahom, provided they submit themselves under the king of Ahom. The Karbis have agreed. Finding the Ahom rule peacefully, many Karbi families came down from the hills and the Ahom king settled
I
all
think,
them.
hello,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mr.
Can you hear me, sir?
Tansing is having
Hello? Hello?
Hello, okay, we can hear you
Okay,
now.
okay. Just I'm reading the following notes that has made by you, sir. But apart from that, I'm going to speak uh, about the issues, the movement, the struggle that we used to have. But first, complete the historical background of what we have written in that. So, finding the Ahom rules peacefully, many Karbis family came down from the hills, and the Ahom king settled all of them in separate village on the condition that they will pay an annual tribute to the Ahom. Later, Karbis breached the term with the Ahom and declined to pay the annual tribute. This led to an expedition by King Rajeshwar Singha in July 1765. The Ahom force advanced the Kapili and demolished the houses of Karbis in the hills. The Karbis came to term again and have been returned to their village. This was Karbi last and the final uprising to Ahom. According to the popular legend, There was a Karbi hero named Thong Nogbe who, from a very young age, could not tolerate the oppression and ill treatment of the Jaintias who ruled them from the southwest. Jaintia operations on the one hand and a home protection on the other can therefore be seen as one of the key causes of the migration of Rongkhang Karbis from the hills to the plain, resulting in a significant increase in the number in the plain. Pre-British period, the British administration in northeast India began in November 1823 when David Scott was appointed the agent to the Governor General of India. Thus, the Karbis first came under the British administration for the first time. From the beginning of the later half of the 19th century, the Karbis of Nagaon and its neighbor hills tract came to notice of the Baptist Christian missionaries. In 1906, the first Karbi church, the Tika Church, was established with 27 members, most of whom were school-going students. British period, as a result of the spread of Christianity and education in the early days, a few Kirby families at Tika got opportunity to move higher along a social cultural ladders. Kirby Adorbar, a social organization, fought for the creation of a separate district for Kirbys. Kirby people submitted a memorandum with the then governor of Assam at Mount Dichwa, demanding the creation of separate hills district for the Kirbys as well as other hill tribe of North Kachar. Big convention of the Kirbys were held. The Kirby Adorbar was formed in that meeting to better organize and intensify the movement among the Kirbys. Despite all this, the hills people of this area failed to get district for themselves. The main reason was perhaps the fact the British government and the Indian leaders of the freedom movement were preparing for the declaration of the country's freedom, leaving aside all local and internal political issues. When when the autonomous district of Karbi Anglong, only Mikir Hills subdivision in the beginning, was first formed in 1951. The Mikir Hills tract was kept as the major part of it, to which were added certain Kirby's predominant areas of Jantia Hills, Nagaon, and Sibsagar. The British administration provided the Kirbys peace and security in contrast to the turmoil that prevailed in Assam toward the latter part of the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century. The British government also brought about tremendous reform in matters of land settlement and paying of tax revenue. The land reform causes the Kirbys to occupy some specific area for settlement, especially the Mikir Hills tract, which was specified and defined by regulation. The Mikir Hills tract was retained as a major constituent part of Karbi Anglong district of independent India. Post-British, after the country after the country freedom, the Mikir and North Kachar Hills district was formed under 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution in 17 November 1951. After several administrative separation, the Mikir Hills tract has been single administrative unit and has come to be called Karbi Anglong instead of Mikir Hills in 1976. During the period, leader of these hills, the district is launching a movement demanding an autonomous state for the Karbis, the Dimasas, and other hills tribe of Assam, comprising Karbi Anglong and North Kachar Hill district under the Article 244A of the Indian Constitution. Two political organizations for the purpose have been formed, namely Kanchas Dikom, Karbi Anglong Autonomous State Demand Committee, and ASDC, Autonomous State Demand Committee, which is Karbis are taking more active part than any other tribe from within the district. The Karbis Association is actively supporting and working for ASDC movement program. So these are some of the notes that I have prepared. But apart from that, sir, can I speak a few minutes to present the issues, the struggle, the movement that we used to chase?
Yeah, sure.
Hello.
Just make it short. Hello, yes,
Okay.
Tang Sing. Just make it
Uh,
short and sweet, so we can have
okay.
questions that we have for the speakers. Okay.
Okay, but let me first brief the situation that right from the inception of our district, what we are facing and what are the issues that has been related to our area and how the organization used to move back to negotiate with the government. So I would like to highlight some of the issues. 1959, where Mikir Hill district was formed under the leadership of Samson Singh Ingti. Uh, uh, we, the Karbi, feel depressed by the mainstream India. So as our leader used continue fighting, and they have demand for the creation of autonomous state. There is Article 244A, in which the Meghalaya state was created in 1971. But after the creation of Meghalaya state in 1971, Article 244A was left to Dima Hasao and Karbi Anglong. So this is a very important article that still the Karbi people and the Dima Hasao are facing. So like the Karbi Student Association are playing a very important role in
Yes. Hello. I think Mr. Tang Sing is having a communication problem again. Hello, Mr. Tang Sing. Can you hear us? Again, we have some of the questions already here. And if you have other questions that you want to send through our chat, we'll have them.
question to I have a question to Mr. Dr. PBM Peswomot from, I think, Khasi tribe. That means he is from Meghalaya.
Okay.
So
Mr. Tang Sing,
my question.
are you finished with your uh, presentation now? So we can welcome all the speakers for the question and answer.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
The presentation is not yet finished, sir. I will be continue that. So
Okay.
right from 1951 till today, 2020, what actually the Karbi tribe we are facing is that uh, we are deprived by our rights. Like when we talk about the land right, we feel that the most part of Karbi Anglong now is dominated by the non-tribal people, but we have a law that a non-tribal cannot buy land of a tribal people. So the increasing situation of buying the tribal land by the non-tribal people, this is a very big issue, and what we think is that this can be create a big chaos and a big problem in coming future. So though we have a land rights, but somehow the government agent are giving permission to buy a land uh, to non-tribal. So we feel that if the Article 244A will implemented by the government, that we can save our land, we can save our culture, and we can save our identity. So land right, and the Article 244A, which is an autonomous state within the state of Assam. So this is a very big issue that still the Karbi people are facing every year, and because of that, many youth has been engaged in some insurgency group also. Like in 1996, some of the youth form a rebellion group like KNV, Karbi National Volunteers, UPDS, KNLF, to give pressurize toward the government for the immediate implementation of Article 244A. But as the government have negotiated with these two rebellion group, but still there is no good results for our district. So now we feel that the government are trying to dominate the right that we have in our uh, Constitution of India. So the main thing is that now the government have to respond as many illegal migrants has been dominated in our area, and we feel that in one day if this domination of land by non-tribal will continue going on, that it will be danger for the tribal people in our land.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Tang Sing, for that. You know, the issues of land is really close and integral to the
Mhm.
concerns of the indigenous people. So now we have questions here for our speakers. Are you still there, Mr. G10, Mr. Anthony, and Mr.
Yes.
PBM?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are here.
So
We
our
are here.
first question, since this is a hot topic in the world about COVID-19, so we have a question here from Kahan. Anyone can choose to answer. What steps are we taking, or maybe in your states, or in if you have news in the whole India's northeast? What steps are we taking to slow the spread of coronavirus to the impoverished areas and to vegetation? Anyone who wants to answer?
Reverend, first you start.
Yeah, I am locked up. So what we are following is a complete lockdown. In other words, we cannot even move out from our homes, and we have to keep a distance. Even shopping, you cannot stand next to one another. These things have been done here in the state of Meghalaya and in our village also. And there is everyday announcement what you can do, what you cannot do. But to me, it's good. It's good. Even particularly the children, we have to keep them home, and it's difficult to keep the children at home. But as we have issued a statement some 2 weeks back, is this enough or not? Prevention alone will not help at all. There is speculation that the death toll will rise up because you don't know exactly what is coronavirus. Nobody knows. What is it? How it came? There are suspicions from where it came. It can be from a biological warfare started way back. And here I am also have in front of me an article regarding the origin from China and what China has done to the people who found coronavirus. So
Okay. How
what
about
we
our
are,
other speakers?
Yes, the
okay, no, let me
particularly
finish.
on this
No,
COVID-19.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
PBM.
no, let me finish. What we need to do is to find out the source of this coronavirus. Just to prevent is not enough. Please. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I just like to highlight due to this COVID-19 coronavirus, lots of our Northeast indigenous people are facing racial discriminations. Like in Delhi, like in Bangalore, particularly in Bangalore, many of the indigenous people from the Northeast and even from Tripura, they were actually one and 2 to 3 of them were being attacked, saying that they're from China. And now those people who are from Tripura, who are residing in a rented house in Bangalore, they were asked once the lockdown is over that they have to vacate their rooms. So this kind of racial discriminations the Northeast indigenous people are really facing, and it is a very hard time. And secondly, like in the state like in Tripura or any other, maybe in the northeast regions, many of our indigenous people are really suffering because they cannot move out, they cannot do any work, and the government scheme is not even reaching to them. So this is another crisis that our people are actually facing in the region.
Okay, I have
Right.
another question here.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
A follow-up about the COVID-19. This is for, I think it's for G10 from Manipur. What is the update of two Manipur activists that were arrested and detained after issuing a statement about, I think, the quarantine for COVID-19 patients?
I I think they were released last night, but then it shows a systematic pattern of abuse and harassment, not just the racial discrimination of our people in other parts of India, outside Northeast, but then even within the region itself, the lockdown has led to a complete what do you call abuse of power by many of the law enforcing agencies. No? So there are several cases where people are beaten up, publicly beaten up, tortured, harassed. And then now there's this case of one of the youth organization, the leaders getting arrested just the day before. And then of course it was released, but then it was like an arbitrary detention just happening yesterday and day before. No? And then of course there are also other powers to the law enforcers to target those who come up with any critical opinion of the steps or initiatives taken up by the government here. No? So it's a little bit repressive and more stringent measures, which is not in accordance with human rights standards or provisions out here. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons, one of the issues that's been causing a lot of controversy out here. No. And then just to supplement on what's been said on the previous question is, I think the restriction on the movement of people is really, really important, no? Because like in Manipur, we already have 2 cases, but all these cases are the ones who from the people who comes from other parts of India and also from outside, no? So all of this, like, so there is a really important need to stop the movement of people from other parts to this region, no? And then, of course, also agree with Anthony that the provision of the essential service is really important because there are so many areas in far-flung areas where the access to food and medicine because of the infrastructure and because that's one of the biggest challenges now. So it compels people to come out and then to try to procure food and other essential needs. No, so I think the government really need to ensure that the provisions are really met. No, and of course the identification of the risks and then test and quarantine. It's really important, yeah. And then one of the things that we are also finding out here is because there's a lot of people who are at risks, like the children, for example, children in orphan home and then disabled, and then even the drug users, people who are already HIV/AIDS, for example, no, already in high risks, and then elderly people. So a lot of them are also under risks because it's difficult to quarantine, because it's simply the home or the thing, it doesn't have the provision to accommodate or come up with clear quarantine process. No.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Mm.
Another question that we have is, maybe you can elaborate on this. The question is from Baljit. How has the border with the Myanmar played a role? Is there conflict with them? Anyone who would like to uh, answer on that question?
Regarding that, I think Jitan can answer because it is with Manipur. I wouldn't know very much about that.
Yeah. Manipur
Yeah.
has direct border with Burma, and then a lot of the communities in Manipur also shares a lot of affinity with many of the tribes and indigenous group in Myanmar itself. No, that
Paul,
connection
is
historically.
the audio can be a
really.
little louder? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Anthony?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
No,
Okay,
I
so
think
because
something is wrong with my audio there.
Okay, so yeah, so because of the border with Burma, yeah, and then of course because it has different aspect. Now, looking at the conflict with conflict aspect, looking into the issues around uh, yeah, so on in terms of conflict dimension now, because the government of India thinks that a lot of our armed groups are based in Burma, no? So there is a lot of military cooperation with India and Myanmar in that sense, also involving many other countries. No? So that also led to a conflict, complication of the conflict, no? Giving a transboundary kind of aspect to the conflict dimension. And then also the challenges of Manipur sharing with Burma is right in the middle of the Golden Triangle of drug, the trading, trafficking, and everything. So Manipur, because of that proximity, we have Manipur is one of the route for drug trafficking and also many other kind of illegal whatever. So it has a direct impact on Manipur as well. No, so all of this also ultimately culminating into the complication of the conflict situation here, because the issues around the trading of arms, drug, and then other traffic items. Yeah, so it has all bearings into the conflict and the complication out here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We also want to acknowledge here the presence of we have here one of the international coordinating committee member, alternate member of ILPS, who is also a fellow from Manipur, our friend from Manipur, Malem, who also have, I think, wants to share on the question. Okay, Malem, can you make it
Okay.
short and sweet?
Yes, so short. Well, regarding the boundary, let me just inform the group that we've done borderland studies. People at the borders knows their exact boundary, traditional boundaries, but the government either knows or doesn't know. Point is, in the name of counterinsurgency, they want to construct fencing at the cost of the villagers whose land will be, encroached. And Jiten was raising these genuine issues of cross-border smuggling and plantations of opium. We have done enough research, and the Indian armies are largely responsible for the flourishing of poppy farming in the borderland areas. They want to keep this poppy plantation as a shield to protect themselves from the revolutionary attacks by the insurgents. As a result, we can't curb poppy farming when there is a collusion between the Indian army and reactionaries and counter-revolutionary forces. It's a very pathetic situations going on. I will not add much. This is just a supplement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malam. Another question that we have here is, uh, what is anyone can answer? What's the relation between the eight sisters or the eight states, or what's the are the states autonomous states of India? Okay, Anthony or Mr. Tang Sing, Jiten, Sir PBM can answer on the relationship between the eight states, the eight
Well,
sisters.
yeah. Well, I think we are very much, close and in solidarity, and we share the same issues, same cause. So our relation is, I think, compared to any other places, I think we are quite strong
Again,
in our, you know, self-determinations, fighting as a whole Northeast, because in APSPA and in the CA, Citizenship Amendment Bill, or any other issue of mega dams or other natural resources, in this struggle and fight, we are all together and we share our own common issue and a common cause. So there is very strong relation, I would say.
Okay.
Can I
Any
can I
other?
add, can I add?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
because
Jiten.
I mean, of course, yes, the different indigenous groups in the region and the states, for example, have different. If you look at the history, if you look at the culture, if you look at tradition, way of life, there's so much of similarity and commonness as well, you know. But then also the one of the unique thing about the region is also the history of the region itself is also diverse, and also it has its own complexity as well. And yeah, and then those complexity is what that sets the premise for the different the the resistance or the ongoing movement for self-determination, you know. So that's why when I present in my introductory the saying, the demands are different. Some groups are calling for more autonomy, some groups are calling for more stronger assertion of their self-determined rights, political rights. So all those are actually based and rooted in their experience of history and their so what's happening now is yeah, and then in terms of the resolution of those conflicts, the government of India has adopted a very piecemeal approach, trying to talk with one group and then talk with that group. So ultimately, it comes to a situation where certain issues that has a lot of implication on the relations with other people, culture, land, territory, for example. Say, for example, in Northeast, we have 200 indigenous groups, but then a lot of that, it also has overlapping territory from one area to another, So in that kind of situation, when the government of India comes up with a piecemeal approach to solving a certain problem, it creates certain level of mistrust and conflict and tensions within the region. For the government, that is part of their strategy. Part of the strategy to keep the people divided, to keep the people disunited and disintegrated. So what that is one of the concern. One of the concern is, yes, for the people we are united, we share our culture, tradition, there are a lot of our history, whatever. But then on a part of government, there is always this move to keep the people divided and region more fragile and this thing. So I think that's one of the biggest concern when it comes to the situation in the region. Yeah.
Okay. Any other answers that we want to share from our speakers?
I want to just say that non-state actors, we try to come together and to try to identify our problems and aspirations and have a common platform. But what Jiten that the government is following the British policy of divide and rule. And so a kind of envy comes out, say, between the Manipuri and the Naga and all that. And that is, I think, a government policy because they have studied British history. And I have in front of me also the British history, how they subjugated our people way back in the 19th century also. So we have to learn from that, from the past mistakes, and we have to come together because anthropologically, 99.9% we are the same, including Paul from Philippines. So 99, but the government tries to highlight the 0.1% of our differences.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we need to wrap up now. So last question, and it will be from me. My question is, given that India's northeast relative to the mainland central India is relatively small, but it is facing a lot of challenges. What do you think is the importance or the role of India's northeast in today's the geopolitical importance in today's context of world where new powers, China and Russia, is coming in competing with the dominance of U.S. of imperialist powers. What do you think is the geopolitical importance of India's northeast in the current world situation?
Sorry, let me start. See, Northeast India has geopolitical interests. And that's why everybody looks at Northeast India as El Dorado. Jiten had shared about our mineral natural deposits that we have here. And they want to exploit that. They want to become friends with India. And I have raised also, the challenges is that Northeast India will be just a walking carpet, That is a danger. We don't exactly welcome the other, like we talk about multinationals now. It's because politics also, earlier also, government of India thought that Northeast people are close to China. And in the 60s, they said we are close to America. So they always have some kind of suspicion against the people of Northeast, the government of India, right from the time of Nehru, not only in the present time. So that's why we are really worried, because we will be just stamped upon for the interests and the economic welfare of somebody else.
Okay. Any other who wants to answer?
Yes, let me try in one sentence.
Okay.
Can I?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Northeast from 1991 is the military bastion and the sources of resources and the gateway of India's capital expansion towards Southeast Asia. In this, India plays a proxy role of the monetary finance capital against the emergent Chinese social imperialism. It's going to be a war zone very soon. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Jiten, Anthony, Mr. Tang Sing, do you want to add more?
Yes.
Let me just add just a few things, because as I said in my presentation, if you see the geography of Northeast, it's right in the middle of three big sub-regions. One is South Asia, is on the west, Southeast Asia is on the east, and then East Asia is right on the top. No, so we are circled by three major sub-regions, and the south is the Bay of Bengal. So it's a very strategic region, no? And then not just geographically strategic, but it is in terms of the resources, in terms of the thing, because you name almost every minerals is all there. You name any, so it's becoming very strategic for not just for India, but even for the global capital, global, so many powerful developed countries. No? So now, and then in the Northeast, the government also have this perception that our resistance group, all the ones leading the self-determination group are supported or funded by China. So that's what the government comes up with. No? So the entire counterinsurgency strategy is also in the pretext, even the entire militarization in Northeast is also in the pretext of combating, undermining the self-determination movement in the region itself, but also to counter China, for example. So there is two aspects. So and India and China doesn't have a good relationship because of the border problem, and in fact, in 1962, there was a war, and in fact, a portion of Northeast was actually occupied by China. No, in fact, Northeast, this Arunachal Pradesh is actually claimed by China till now. So, which means Northeast itself is a contested territory when it comes to from the Chinese district. No? So that's why India, apart from its geographic aspect, political aspect, or economic aspect, it also has this aspect of combating China. So that's why India collaborates with other countries that doesn't have good relationship with China, not like Japan. So, so if you see the investment in Northeast, it's all Japanese or US or German or the Europeans, no? So you hardly find direct Chinese investment in terms of the resource exploitation or whatever, but it's mostly coming in from the countries which are more from Europe and from US and Japan, no? So I think we need to understand that aspect, no? And the cooperation is not limited to the economic cooperation or military cooperation, but this thing, but there is also an increased military cooperation between India and Afro-ASEAN countries, no? US, Japan, and this thing. So yeah, but ultimately it all leading to a layers of conflict situation in the region.
Okay. So that's
Okay.
it. Okay.
Yeah, I will just add, because most of the point has been already added by Jiten and PBM.
Yes, yes.
As the region, as Jiten has mentioned, then the entire natural resources are here. This is one very basic and big reason for in Northeast India to be part of India. But the people of Northeast is never being wanted by the India. That is very clear. Secondly is that the people of the Northeast, since we're in a very like small compared to any other state, and as PBM has mentioned, that they have used the British policy, divide and rule policy. So that is one area where they find easy to divide us, and they can easily conquer and take away the resources. And they find that they can easily mold and finish the people of the Northeast. This is one area where they have targeted. And secondly, as you could see, like Chittagong, I mean, the port is there, where it is very easy for the trade, flow the trade and connect the Asian regions. So it is very easy economically, transportationally, and by air, and by all means, it is quite easy. And because the Northeast is full of resources, so they can easily, supply from here. Export input can be easily done. So that is one area where they see with a less investment, they can really do a big market. So even currently, you could see the electricity power is being supplied to Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal, and many other part of the country. So this is one area which is a very easy route to connect to the rest of the country. So this is the basic, tactics that they use. So therefore, they cannot. But initially, like before, when India got independent, initially they didn't want actually Northeast to be part of India. But when they have realized that the Northeast is full of natural resources, the Northeast can be the part and parcel of the resource that can make India a powerful country in future. So taking that view into consideration, that Northeast has become very important for them. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. I think we had a very, very productive and fruitful and a lot of knowledge from a relatively small and unknown uh, area, state in Asia, in the world, have come to be presented to us today. And this is not the last. We are planning. We are very much excited to hold more talks about India's Northeast. There are a lot of we can talk about, and a lot of solidarity and unity that the peoples of different countries can extend with the peoples of India's Northeast, and also for them. So again, thank you so much to all our
Thank
speakers.
you.
Dr.
Thank you.
PBM, Mr. G10, Mr. Tang Sing, and Mr. Anthony, and of course, all our participants. And we hope to see you again to our
Thank you to
next webinar
ILPS.
on India's Northeast.
Yeah.
So you can also always check our Facebook page, our Twitter account, and our website for more of the events and webinars like this. And again, we hope everyone to be safe in time of COVID-19 and to be healthy and to be well, so we can meet again on our next webinars. And that's all for now.
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.
TSF.
Thank you.
TSF. TSF. TSF.
Bien.
Anthony, TSF.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jitan. Thank you.
Reverend TSF. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ừ,